Welcome to Ask the Experts. I'm Jill Schlesinger, editor-at-large, and he's...
Jack Otter, executive editor. I
Right.
almost stumbled that time. It's
Oh,
usually
man.
you who forgets my
It took me
title.
only like a year or two to get
Yeah.
it. We thank you so much for joining us today. We have a fabulous guest, Ellen Gordon Reeves, who is a career expert, job gurus, all those things. I'm going to do her intro in 1 second. Let's do some quick headlines first, Jack. The market's closed again. I think this is the 10th day in 11 that the Dow is down. Dow is off 32 points, 12,599. NASDAQ down 19 points at 2874. S&P 500 is down almost 6 points at 1324. I'm saying we should blame Greece. What do you think?
I think blame it on the Greeks, absolutely. You know, the funny thing is, a week ago we had this conversation and we noted that the market tended to open really ugly, in what you call amateur hour, and then it would get closer and closer and closer to break even. Today it was pretty strong at the start and then got ugly late. And in the last few days, that it's kind of been sell at the end of the day, which is actually a little bit scarier.
Yeah, I think I think that this is very unnerving what's going on with Greece. We basically don't have a government. They're like, hey, Larry, Moe, Curly, could you take over the government right now? And we'll hold another election. Don't do anything. Hang on. So the next election looks like the middle of June. And
it's not as if the prospects for the next election are too exciting.
And what's interesting about it also is to think that really we're finally talking about Greece leaving the Eurozone. How likely do you think that is?
For real.
For real.
No, I think it really seems like it used to be, gosh, they'll find a way to muddle through. Now it's kind of like, it's hard to think about exactly how they could possibly stay in. The bank runs have basically already started, people realizing that if they want their euros, they're going to have to stuff them under the mattress because it's drachmas, one of these days. So it looks pretty bad.
I think that they've pulled out about 800 million euros have come out of Greek deposit accounts into German accounts.
Yeah.
Because remember,
No surprise,
they're
yeah.
part of the Eurozone. They can put them wherever they want without any problem. All right, we got the big Facebook IPO. Are you psyched?
I find myself thinking, gee, maybe I could buy just a couple shares,
You are insane.
I know, and then I slap myself still and
Come
realize,
on.
no. I think what we got to do is we got to take bets as to where it's going to close on Friday.
Okay, so the offering range, 34 to 38 bucks a share for the IPO range. The valuation, let's call it $100 billion. It also does make Mark Zuckerberg worth somewhere around $25 billion, which is
We on Money Watch are going to have a little widget, that's sort of tech speak for a little box, in our stories that tracks his wealth all day long. So log on to Money Watch and you can see just how many billions Zuckerberg is worth.
Can we have a conversion with number of hoodies into something like that? And by the way, the company did boost the size of its IPO by almost $3 billion. A lot of the insiders say they want to sell more. Zuckerberg's going to sell 30 million shares in the debut, so he'll be okay. Meanwhile,
Okay.
same day, General Motors says we're going to stop advertising on Facebook, and they spend $10 million a year. It's not like small dollars. They said it's not working.
It's small dollars in the realm of General Motors' advertising budget. It's a tiny percentage. What struck me was the timing of this. So I see one of two scenarios. Either somebody at the Journal has a very good relationship with his or her source there, and it was an honest leak, or else somebody at General Motors is angry at Zuckerberg and wanted to throw this little dart right before the IPO. Yeah.
Last thing today is we've got some information about housing, and maybe actually we're really going to see the housing market recover. The Commerce Department said housing starts increased better than expected, 2.6%. So that's good. I'm going to do a yes, but, which used to drive me crazy when my clients would be like, yeah, but looks like housing starts are less than a third of their peak in January of 2006. Are we bottoming or not?
Yes, but housing is very different from stocks. So when you think about the V that the stock market formed, right, in March of '09, if you didn't move quick, you missed half the run-up. Housing is going to take an awfully long time. It is not a liquid market. It took a long time to burst, and it's going to take a long time to go back up. I truly think looking back, you're going to see us bouncing along bottom now, whether it's the precise bottom or not.
And the mortgage delinquency rate actually declined in the first quarter to the lowest level since 2008. That is helped a lot by the improving job market, which leads us to our next guest, Ellen Gordon Reeves. I like saying all three of your names.
I like when you say it. It's to honor my grandmother.
I love that. Is it your
Anne Gordon, my mom's mother, who never went past the 6th grade. She always said, write a book. I don't think she thought I would write a book with nose ring in the title.
Well, let me just do a little bit of your bio, because she is the best-selling author of Can I Wear My Nose Ring to the Interview? A crash course in finding, landing, and keeping your first real job. Ellen's also an expert on self-presentation, women in transition, changing careers, salary negotiation. This is a good one to keep around. And other aspects of individual professional development. She also happens to have the amazing either good fortune or insanity being the president of the Harvard Alumni Association. She is the creator, producer, and host of talk show and nightly live performance in New York City. Is that still happening?
It's happening June 1st through 3rd at Launchpad in Brooklyn.
Launchpad,
Come
Brooklyn,
on
New
down.
Yorkers. So, yeah, she studied at both Harvard and Second City. So there aren't a lot of people who have that necessarily.
Combination, good
right?
combo.
So the job market has been improving. I know that we had two reports, but really since the beginning of the year, we've done not a bad job of kind of making the economy improve here. We see some good stories. What are you hearing out on the street?
Well, the thing is, I always tell job hunters, just really don't listen to the numbers, with all due respect to the numbers, and I'm glad they may be improving, but you only need to think about one number, one job, the right job for you. And 80% of all jobs exist in what we call the hidden job market. They're never advertised anyway. And 80% of jobs, although they're not the same 80%, are filled by personal referral. So people want to send their resume hurtling into the black void of cyberspace, but I say, wouldn't you rather spend 100% of your time on 80% of the opportunities? Even though I am no mathematician, believe me, but I still know it's better to stop looking for a job and start looking for a person. The right person will lead you to the right job.
So you are, in fact, a networking queen. I mean, this is what really kind of the core values of the way you talk to people, right?
Just, that's why I love the alumni work, connecting people, helping them figure out who to talk to, because jobs don't hire people, people hire people. So the more you're out there knowing what you want to do, telling people what you want to do, learning how to talk about what they need you to do in their language, the better off you'll be.
Now, it's graduation season, and I am acutely aware of this. I was around a bunch of my nieces and nephews, and everybody's kind of like freaking out a little bit. There was a survey that was released this month from the Center for Workforce Development at Rutgers University, normally known for its basketball, not for its studies, but I'm very happy to say that this is interesting. They looked at college graduates from the classes of 2006 through 2011. I want to give you 3 stats that jump out from this study. College graduates over the last 5 years, 2006 to 2011, only 51% have full-time jobs. That is startling to me.
It's shocking, yes.
That's rough.
Next. Starting salary is $3,000 lower in 2011 than in 2006. And 52% of college graduates are paid by the hour. So let's start at the top here. So full-time jobs. So they could be working part-time. It's not so terrible. They could be in school because the market kind of stunk.
A lot of them are staying in school or going back to grad school right away instead of taking time off. There are people who are volunteering and interning, so they're not going to count in these job numbers, and that's a great thing to do. If you're not full-time employed, as long as what you're doing with the rest of your time is positioning yourself to get employed, then again, that number doesn't matter. And there are a lot of entrepreneurs, so we may not be seeing the right kinds of the whole story in those numbers.
So you're not as depressed about that as I am?
I am not. Those numbers are not good. I can't get them up. But let's look at the 50%. Let's look at the half full glass.
Oh, she's so good.
I'm a pessimist by nature, believe me. But in this area, we have to stay positive and say the other thing that goes along with these terrible numbers is opportunity that has never existed before. First of all, it's not a stigma not to be employed full time, and that's one of the first times in history that it is not a I'm not saying it's not a problem. It is not a black mark not to have a job. It's just welcome to the dark fraternity. You're like everybody else. Either you don't have a job or you were laid off or you're not full-time employed. And this means that employers have to be very, very flexible so that if you know how to position yourself correctly and you know how to speak their language, you know what you want to do, as I said before, there really are opportunities that have not existed before, particularly for recent grads. Why? Don't tell your mother I said this, but you're cheap. You're a cheap hire, and we can get you and your experience for much less money than perhaps a senior level person. So I really want people to feel valuable, not vulnerable, even in this economy.
So I just want to ask if you have a child who is graduating, and you don't want to be a nag, but you want to stay on top of it. What is the right tone to set here? I mean, the kids obviously knows that he or she doesn't have a job.
Right. So the thing is, it's so tough for parents, especially your kids may be coming back to live with you. This creates its own challenges. And for the students, I say, look, this is not a hotel. You have to pitch in. So let's try to keep things calm on the home front. But it is not helpful for a parent to say, have you watched, too much TV today? Or is that really, no Facebook until you've applied for 6 jobs? On the other hand, what you can do is say, can I introduce you to some of my colleagues at work, in my community, in church or temple, or wherever you're going? That's how parents can be helpful. And instead of the parent trying to micromanage the resume or the cover letter or the bios, I say, again, let's have a colleague of the parent, because there's a little too much emotion sometimes when the parent gets involved.
Yeah, that's fantastic advice. It's like parents trying to teach kids to drive. It suddenly goes in other directions that it shouldn't.
Absolutely.
No.
Well, now we were talking about kids who move back in with their parents, these boomerang kids. And of course, that brings us to our weekly edition of Worth It, Not Worth It. I didn't even speak over the animation. It's a miracle. Okay, so Jack's book is called Worth It, Not Worth It. There it is. Okay. Jack, you've got a chapter that says live with mom and dad or go solo in squalor.
That's one of the choices.
What is the deal here? I mean, is it better to have the free rent? And by the way, not everybody has free rent, right?
True.
Because some people have to pay some. But what do you think? What's the story here?
Well, I think that some of the best advice you can give college students when they enter the real world, as we call it, and I know college wasn't easy, so that's kind of a demeaning
it's ridiculous.
expression. But in any event, continue to live like a college student. If you can budget as you had to when you were a college student, you'll be in great shape later on, whether you have a job or not. I mean, if you don't have a job, you probably have no choice. But even if you have a job, old couches are fabulous. Rolling Rock is just fine. There's no need for the fancy microbrews yet. So living at home is another way, obviously, to save a whole lot of money. And if there's any money coming in, put that away. Believe me, you'll need it later, and you'll thank yourself for having saved it. At some point, that's going to become untenable. You're going to move out. And again, live like a college student. The first apartment should probably be shared with a bunch of other people. And in the book, I have a formula where you can weigh the idea of, in that apartment, you find your toothbrush in a different place every morning, whereas at home, you might have to explain to mom why it's 8:30 in the morning and you're just walking in the door. So there's trade-offs there. But the key is try to save as much money as possible. And obviously, some people are forced into that situation now.
And Jack, if you are going it alone, on the website we've got the top 10 cities for college grads.
This was an interesting list. Our real estate blogger Elise Glink put this together based on a survey by Rent.com. And there were a bunch of criteria, but one of the keys was the unemployment rate in that city. So all of these cities are in the 5 to 6% range versus the 8% range nationally. And I haven't seen the numbers, but I suspect with college graduates, it's probably more like 3 to 4%, because nationally the unemployment rate for college graduates is about 4.1%. What this list is not entirely cheap. Number one was Boston. Obviously an expensive town to live in, but very highly educated workforce, and there are jobs available. It goes through a bunch of them to what I found interesting was Austin, because number 11 or the 11th slide is number 10. If you compare the rents in Boston, which were about $2,000 plus for a one-bedroom, in Austin it was $774 for a two-bedroom apartment. So techies head straight to South by Southwest.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing is, in those cities, Boston particularly, I am familiar with, but in these towns, and if they're college towns, they may be expensive to live in, but there are proportionally, I think, more free things to do. There are cheaper student food options. There's a lot of free stuff that these cities offer. There are things going on campuses, so you can be paying less and be more entertained. So you're saving money that way.
And great opportunities for networking.
Absolutely.
So in Boston, obviously, full of colleges. So anyone who's got connections at one of those, you can open up a lot of doors that way.
So I'm just wondering, you come out of school and you don't have a job yet, and do you get these kids are not doing what we did, which was like, I had a job offer and I put it off till August 1st or September 1st. I'm going to go backpack around Europe. No one's doing that, right?
There are a few people who are doing that, but I think in this economy, to be a little safer, you may want to hit the pavement a little sooner. Take a vacation. Absolutely take a break. You should have a break, because people get so focused on getting jobs that they forget that once they have it, they will have it, and they will have to go to it every day. So I say give yourself a break, take the time you need, but the first thing you should get is a business card. And this is not intuitive to students. They say, I'm going to wait until I have a job. No, you need to have a business card before you're in business. Just with a professional email address, no hotmama@hotmail.com, but just your name. I don't want to see a year after it. I don't want to wonder, is this your high school graduation, your college graduation, your name, a cell phone with a professional message, not hey dude, but this is your work phone essentially. So, and a way to contact you so that when we meet, if I sit next to you on the bus, if we meet in the line at the post office or the supermarket, we can have a conversation, and if you are able to tell me succinctly what you're looking for, I may be able to help you. And then I need your card. I don't want to write it on a napkin or a matchbook cover.
The other day I met one of my heroes, Christopher Buckley, who is an author. And so here's a guy who does not have a corporate job of any sort. Nobody's going to issue him business cards, but he gave me his card. And it just says, like you say, Christopher Buckley in a nice formal-looking font. It's got his address, his number, and his email address.
And there you go. I want to call him up. He's hysterical. Thank you for not
Guy.
smoking. That was the...
Thank you for not smoking,
I was
exactly.
laughing on the subway.
Okay, so we got some messages in the chat room, and first this guy Tom was like, "Is this just for recent graduates? I'm going to waste my time here." Like, oh my God!
Oh no, Tom, we have plenty to say. Just
chill out.
You know
okay?
the virtue of patience. You're older, Tom.
Good Lord. Okay. So let's just see. This is funny. Somebody's like, they're doing a little job chatting online. I don't see the question.
They're
that you're
networking.
telling me. They're networking.
They're
here.
connecting.
So, let me start with a question that's interesting here. I got a question from somebody that was like so super duper, like, I'm expunging my name. I don't want anything. So Tim writes, I am a high level executive at a Wall Street firm. I have found that some of my counterparts are paid significantly more than I am. I make a lot of money. I know I make a lot of money, and I know that I should be happy with what I make. But when you find out that you are making $550,000 a year and all of your contemporaries are making $800,000 to $1 million, what do you do? And he writes, he goes, I know this is crazy.
Oh, okay. So he has
knows it's
perspective on
crazy.
it. How about he can quit and I'll take his job, even at that level?
But what he's saying is something that's real, right?
He's making a good point. And this has even happened to me. I left a job and I found out someone was hired at twice the rate they were paying me, and I didn't feel great. But one of the issues is we don't know, we don't have all the information. When he started, we don't know what the base was. We don't know how much of this is bonus. So what can you do to increase the salary? You have to have a frank conversation with a supervisor and say, I'm aware of this possible disparity, because first of all, no one's really going to give you the real information. So you have to also take it with a little grain of salt and admit that and say, we don't know, but I have heard this and I feel my work is that valuable. So what is it that I would need to do to get myself up to that level? And it's not in their interest to do that, right? If they can keep you, but so either you have to threaten to leave and mean it, or you have to say, what is it that I can do? What are the other people doing that is earning them $300,000 more a year? What do I need to do? No one has told me that I have a performance problem, so what's the issue?
And at that level, and any level, but especially that level of pay, he's going to have to quantify what he brings to the firm.
Exactly.
So, I bring in $2 million, $10 million, whatever it is a year.
So at that point, do you go out and shop yourself around and try to get an offer to come back and kind of hold the boss's feet to the fire?
I'd like to know what Ellen says. That's a dangerous game.
It's risky. And also because these jobs are not, there aren't as many of them as there were, and it's a small world. So people may get wind of this. I would be very careful of that. And I think it's one thing to say to your boss, look, I could shop myself around, but I want to be here. I have institutional knowledge. I've felt that I've been valuable. What can I do? And the other thing that I would do before I approached the whoever's making these decisions, network up and down the food chain. Don't just go up, go down. Have as many conversations with people in as many departments as possible, with clients and with competitors. Get your information and say, you know what, I found this out. This is what I think we would need to do to bring in more clients, more business, this and that. I've been talking to XYZ. Show how valuable you are. Show you know the scenario, and then make the case. Don't just go in there and say, poor me, it's not fair, because no one cares if it's fair or not. They just want to know, what can you do for me? And what, as you say, Jet, to quantify what value can you bring concretely to the company.
All right, other end of the spectrum here. Liza was laid off, let's see, I shouldn't say this. Let me read it verbatim. 5 months ago, I was accused of sexual harassment and fired. Oof. This was less than 6 weeks after a perfect annual performance review and a substantial raise. Without getting into the details, let's just say that the only evidence is an email from me to my accuser telling him that I didn't feel comfortable dating people at work after his repeated unwelcome advances. How do I handle the question, why did you leave your previous job? I loved my job. I would never have left or done anything to jeopardize it. I have made it to the finalist round for 3 positions and not gotten them. I think my answer to this question is what's killing me. Right now I have part-time work. I'm seriously considering going back to school and building my freelance business. I am smart, talented, and highly qualified, but my situation seems like the kiss of death in a competitive market where everyone is smart, talented, and highly qualified.
This is a really tough one.
Wow.
I can't pretend otherwise. And the fact that, if these really are the facts, and the fact that Liza is taking the heat for someone else's advances, this is really unfortunate, and I can see how that would happen. But there are a couple of things to find out. One, I would not be stating the actual circumstances. I don't think she needs to get into that. So, Liza, I would say, you can say, I had a difference of opinion. I had a conflict at work. I loved it there. I had a great review, and I had an issue with one of my coworkers, and it didn't work. And I'm sorry about that. Now, if they press you for details, I still would stay pretty vague. But the other thing that you have to do is go back and say, who is saying what when you give your references? It's very important. Anyone who's listed on your reference sheet, and let's not forget, if you give me a sheet of references and I know someone else at the company, I'm calling anyone I know there, not just your references. But, so you never want to lie, but you have to make sure that the people who you've stated as references are not giving the whole scenario. And this may be part of the problem. I think this is also why I say you've got to start looking for the right people, because someone who really knows you, understands you, knows the situation, will recommend you to someone who will not question the background. You can say there was a complicated situation at work. This is my last review. It really was fantastic. I'm putting the past behind me, and I just need to move on. Let's talk about what we can do in the future.
I would definitely get a copy of that review and give it unsolicited. Just make sure that gets in somebody's hand because of these conversations
That's a great
that will
idea
take place.
To show, right.
One thing that I wonder is, should she bring an attorney into this? I'm not suggesting necessarily sue the other company, but given what little facts we know, it's possible that she was the victim herself more than the
That's what
She may have
thinking.
been. There's something, I have to say, there's something not right about this situation, right? There are a lot of red flags here, and so we don't know the full situation. She may not know the full situation. We may not be getting all of the details, but what I would only say that if she really has been victimized that way, then it is worth at least a legal letter saying to the company, it seems that negative things are being said. I am not bad-mouthing the company. We need to come to an agreement about what I will say and what you will say when when a reference comes up around my name, because we have to be able to give people who have not committed crimes the benefit of the doubt. That's the basis of our justice system, and people in employment deserve that courtesy as well. But you do need the facts.
Oof, that's
a tough
one, though, right?
That is a tough one. And the thing is to try to stay positive. If you're going into interviews, as she may be, feeling correctly defensive, this will communicate itself. So you have to really be over it. You have to go through the stages of grief and anger and all that, and be able to sit in an interview and say, this is behind me. The right situation will present itself. I will be able to communicate this to the right person. I will be hired again, as long as you're not again, communicating, exuding any of this anger or victimization or hostility. But the minute the word sexual harassment get near a workplace, it's over.
Yeah, that is bad. Michelle in the chat room said she's been laid off since November of 2008, but she's been on a few temp assignments. Nothing has gone full time. I hear that a lot. So what do you suggest for that?
Well, one thing is, I wish I could ask back. I'm hoping that she's temping in companies and industries very specifically in which she wants to continue working. And I'm also hoping that she's using the temp time, again, to be networking and connecting up and down the food chain. You should never be eating lunch alone. You should always be offering to take people out for a cup of coffee.
Wait a minute, how are you going to take them out? You got no money.
Well, a cup of coffee, let's say, temping is still going to give you a few cents.
Let's go
Okay,
take a walk.
let's take a walk. Let's go to the water cooler and have a nice cup of water. But something inexpensive so that you can be meeting people and again finding out what are the openings, what might you do there, and on the side while you're temping, if you're not working full time, you've got to be always improving your skill set, whether it's shadowing people, taking a course, seeing if there's any other professional development opportunities, and to know what you're aiming for so that these temp jobs are very specifically aimed at that. The other thing is sometimes people in temp jobs don't let other people know that they want to work there full time. Some people assume you're there part time because you want to be there part time. You may have family responsibilities, you may have other things. So sometimes it's the case that people aren't even saying what they want to do.
And one more thing for the temp, everyone at the office always gripes about stuff. People always complain about stuff. So listen very carefully. Find out what the problems are at this company that no one is solving.
And solve them.
And obviously, and solve them. Obviously, at sometimes you need to be in a senior level. But there are lower level things that you could attack and suddenly become very valuable.
Exactly.
We got a very wild question here that I'm going to try to it's sort of paraphrase it. But basically, a 55-year-old woman who's pretty high ranking was recently diagnosed with something that requires her to use oxygen. She's like, and this is such a weird question, but I'm sure it's so scary for her. She says, "Do I actually bring my oxygen tank in there? Do I do this? Do I come out at the first interview? Do I wait? I mean, first of all, I would like to know whether if you need it. I mean, can you
go
do
to
it?
the I would have to say, if you can go to the interview without the oxygen tank, I would do that. Just because, why? Does the oxygen tank affect your ability to do your job? We are hoping not, but it will be, what is the problem here? The question is in the mind of the employer, are you going to keel over? And I'm sure you're worried about that too. So not to make light of it, these are serious things, but many people have health issues that just are not in the face of the employer. So I say, let's not raise the red flag at the beginning. Let's find out as much as you can. If you really have to bring the tank, then first I would warn them in advance. I would actually say, I just have an issue. We don't have to say it's long-term. We don't have to say it's chronic. We can just say, I just had a medical situation and I'm going to have to come with my oxygen tank. I hope that won't bother anybody. It's fine. There's nothing I can't do. It's just I'm going to have this with me. Go ahead, Jack.
Well, I was just going to say, the one, if you show up with an oxygen tank, that's going to be the main thing the interviewer remembers. It's not fair, but it's just how it is.
Right.
So any steps you can take to not have to do that at the first time. Then the second time.
Then you could bring it to a clinic.
Yeah.
But again, if you have to do it, and this goes for people, I've had people ask about all kinds of other disabilities. The point is to make the employer is going to notice this. Your job is to make the employer as comfortable as possible and to convince the employer that, again, there's nothing you can't do about this job. This is not an impediment. So I think it's on your shoulders as the interviewee to hit the nail on the head and say, look, you're noticing that I don't have one arm, or you're noticing that I have an oxygen tank. Let me explain the situation. Be very minimal. Don't go into a great deal of detail. Just say, this is it. I'm living with it. It's not as bad as you would think. It's not a problem for me. It's all about your attitude and how you convince the employer that this is, I'm not loving this, but I can do the job and I'm excited. Let's talk about what I can do for you.
Wow. That's hard, though. I mean,
It's
I feel
hard.
so terrible because, of course it matters.
It matters, but you
want to minimize it.
You can minimize it. You want to hit the nail on the head. You don't want to pretend otherwise. But again, you have to address the unstated concern of the employer, which is that there's going to be a problem. And if you can convince them, this is not your problem. This is my problem. I don't have a problem with this. Let's talk about, the future.
Okay, so Christine, I interned for 1 year, finally got a full-time job at a nonprofit. She's 24 years old. And I was planning to go back to law school, but now I'm scared I'm going to spend 3 years in law school and come out and I won't get a job. But I don't really want to stay where I am. So there's this great fear factor for anyone who has a job, even if you probably think you should do something else or it's the wrong job for you. Jack, do you stay in the job just to keep it?
That's a tough one because, for one thing, it's going to be 3 years later. So things will have changed. I can't assure her that they'll be better. But I think at that age, you gotta just do it. If she really wants to go into the law, I mean, if she's just going to law because she thinks that's a good place to make a buck, then she's got to reevaluate. But if she really loves constitutional law or whatever it is, I would say go for it. You're young. Having a law degree is never going to hurt you. You might have a hard time paying it off. Figure out if are you borrowing for it, and if so, how's that going to work?
But let's also talk about what are you going to do during those 3 years of law school and your summers.
Right.
So you can't be, I know you'll have a lot of studying to do, but you really have to make the most of term time and summer employment opportunities so that once you've identified a firm or an area of practice or something like that, you're aiming towards it. And so you're getting to know people in that field, in that company, in that city. And for example, let's say you're interested in the nonprofit. Once you get a law degree, you can go back and say, well, now I want to still work with you, but I have more skills and I can work in a different area.
And do you think that it's worth it if you're going to go to law school, to stay in touch with a nonprofit and do something for them along the way? I mean, it might not be bad to keep your hand in it, right?
Keep your hand in it, or another, or a brother sister nonprofit wherever the law school is, or it's always taking these connections that you have and the jobs you've had and the jobs you want and figuring out how do I move to the next level. But again, one of the mistakes people make is not knowing really where they want to go. They take jobs because they can get them, not because they want them or because they know why they want them or what they want to do. So don't go to law school, right, you better know why you want that degree and what you think you want to do with it. Otherwise, you will not be able to maximize the 3 years when you have all the luxuries of being a student. Internships being offered to you, fellowships, all kinds of things that are available to law school students. But you've really got to know what you want so you can make the most of those.
I don't even know what I want. I'm 40 blah, blah, blah years old. And you were expecting a lot from kids who are 20-something,
Well,
no?
we are, but they have, again, because they have student status and young people status, we're very apt to help them. So, and I want to talk about what is the difference between an exploratory interview and an informational interview. I think a lot of people conflate the two. And speaking of law, for example, I asked a law school recruiter friend of mine, well, what are the worst things that people do? And he said, they use us as a sounding board. So I'll ask them, why do you want to be a litigator for, say, a summer associate? And the student will say, oh, well, that litigation's interesting, but, I'm also thinking of working for the UN. What do you think of that? And he's thinking, I'm not going to hire you because I need someone who comes in and says, I want to be a litigator. I've always wanted to work in a law firm. These are the things I did when I was in high school and college to show that. So I think I really do ask students and anyone in the employment sector, if you want to get a job, you need to know more than other people about what you want, what you can do, and what the employer wants. It's an enormous amount of effort and homework, but it will pay off. It absolutely will pay off.
Okay, here's a question from Michelle, who's been unemployed since November of 2008 with a degree in business management, and my computer organizational and communication skills are excellent. Can you tell me what I can do to find full-time employment? I've applied to jobs as an administrative assistant, sales assistant, receptionist. Where are the jobs, Ellen?
Well, first I want to say something about the fact now. It's okay in this missive if you tell us that you have excellent communication skills. I hope you're not saying that in a resume, because anyone who says they have excellent communication skills does not. We show, we do not tell. And so this is a really interesting point. I do not want to see any self-assessing language or thoughts in something like that. And again, even in this email, what I need to know is use an example, use a concrete, specific, as you say, Jack, quantify what you can do for an employer or an organization instead of just saying, I'm really motivated, I'm a good communicator, I take initiative. No, we don't work that way. We need examples. We need to know exactly what you can do, what you have done, and what you can do for the employer. So in this case, again, it's too vague. I almost can't say, where are the jobs? You're applying for a whole bunch of jobs, but I'm not hearing enough specifics to say what you should be looking for. But I think maybe there's a little more homework that you need to do to figure out let's talk about some concrete openings and how your skills meet them and transform the language into what they need.
She's probably frustrated because it's been going on so long. She's tried different ones, but unfortunately that frustration only hurts you getting a job. It doesn't help you. Nobody cares, which is the sad truth. I mean, it sounds harsh, but nobody cares that you're frustrated. So when you're applying for an administrative assistant job, your resume has to be tailored specifically for the administrative assistant job.
Yes.
And then you have to change it to apply for, I forget what the other one was.
Right. Let me ask you something, Jack. You look at a lot of resumes. You certainly interview people all the time. What are the mistakes that people are making when they come in and interview with you?
Well, Ellen has just nailed one of the big ones, and I think of one recently where the person just kept on sort of using these vague descriptions about communication, hardworking, motivation, blah blah blah, and
Passion.
yeah, and I didn't have a single example of what this person had actually brought to the job, and the more I heard the adjectives, the less I thought that there was actual skill level here. And it's particularly hard for college students or recent graduates because, of course, they haven't had a job yet. So, but whatever it is, tell me. Even we were interviewing for interns recently, and some of them could tell me what they'd done, in this case, on the college newspaper or whatever, and that was great. But others just use these adjectives.
Vague.
So what you need to do is right now picture yourself in that interview, and do you have an answer for these questions that gives me the anecdote that I need, the story of how you, and if you don't, go out and have
get
that
one.
experience and then come back to me.
Well, and I think the other thing is I find that people don't take enough control in the interview as the interviewee. Now, naturally, again, they feel nervous, they feel vulnerable. But I say the successful job hunt is the intersection of two searches, yours for the right job and the employer's for the right person. So in the interview, if you're able to ask, I've seen the stated job description, this is why I applied, but can you tell me what has worked for you in the past? What has not worked? Even if it's an intern, what kinds of interns have been great? And then if you say, well, we had someone who really took a lot of initiative, and then you spin an example to that and say, at my college newspaper, I actually classified a whole, set up a whole filing system so that we were able to access things more easily. Give me a concrete example. And then at the end of the interview, ask, what is your timeline? What's your frame? What do you, can I contact you? Because these are the questions I get about, well, I haven't heard from anybody. What do I do? And is the one who says she's not hearing anything, is she following up? A lot of people don't get jobs because they don't ask for them and they don't follow up.
And there's so much competition. All the people running against you are following up. Yeah.
Andrew in the chat room just graduated from college earlier this month. Woohoo! He's wondering how to compensate for his lack of experience. So, I think that's the question that most kids have.
This is the big question. But Andrew, here's the thing. One, you have experience and you have to learn how to talk about it. If you went to college for 4 years, even if you did nothing but study, then what you have is you're single-minded, you pursue something relentlessly. I hope you have good grades to show for it. But that means you have research skills, you may have quantitative skills, you have skills. You have to know how to talk about it. The idea that you haven't done anything because you've been in college is a mistake. If you babysat while you were in college or walked a dog, you've shown responsibility. People say, should I leave the dog walking and the babysitting off my resume? It has nothing to do with my job. No, I'm thinking if someone trusts you with their baby and their dog, if you're not going to put them in the microwave, this is a good thing.
You're not going to put them in the microwave.
So these are people's most prized possessions, but they don't know how to talk about it. And the other thing is when asked about a weakness, a recruiter actually said, an HR person said, here's the answer. One answer that's very valid is this: what's your weakness? Well, I'm concerned that I don't have years of full-time work experience, which of course is unassailable because you couldn't have years of full-time. But you follow up immediately with, I haven't had years of full-time experience, but every summer I worked at blah, 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 or I interned here, or during term time I was a research assistant, or I worked in the campus bookstore, whatever you did. But you've got to understand what those experiences are and what's the skill that you learned from that. If it's being a cashier at Starbucks, you handled money, you had responsibility, you multitasked, you juggled. There are a lot of things that are valuable to the workplace that you're not thinking of.
And you've got to have this answer. You got to rehearse it over and over again because you're going to be nervous in that. And if you can't say it sitting in your living room, you sure as heck can't say it across the desk from an interviewer.
That's right.
I had one case where I worked at a place with a young reporter, and my boss asked me to start a paper trail on her and wanted to fire her. And I actually was able to turn her around. And frankly, I wouldn't say this in the interview. It's not because I'm a genius. It's because he was a lousy boss and he didn't know how to take her good qualities and bring them forward. And she ended up, and she's doing marvelously now out there and just doing a great job breaking stories at a prestigious outfit. The point was, I had this story down cold. So, and it could answer different questions. What's a problem you've solved? How are you as a manager? They're all different questions. I pull out the same story, and it was 100% true. But the point is, I was ready for that question, and everyone has to be.
You're spinning it, you're tailoring it. And the other thing is, again, in my world, you're not ever walking into an interview cold.
Right.
You have talked to people, you've used Facebook, you've used LinkedIn, everything to find out who works at this company. company, anyone, a cousin, a brother, anyone in college, your friends' parents may have jobs. Somebody knows somebody. So you've talked to someone, even if you only go in and say, I just talked to someone, they work in the Ohio office, they're in the mailroom. The show that you still bothered to find out whatever you could about this company shows a certain kind of interest and initiative that I think is really important.
And I have a question, because a self-serving question for my nieces and nephews, because I want to know, at what age do you start flipping into, like, you got to get serious about a real internship / job? So, my nephew's graduating from high school. Okay, that he's still a camp counselor, right?
That's fine. Again, do you know how to talk about it? And the way to talk about camp counseling is, first of all, to quantify. I just saw one of my friend's sons has been a camp counselor, but he's interested in the hospitality industry. So as he graduates, we're saying, well, Eric, the thing is, you've been able to engage parents, you've solved problems. The work that you do keeps the people coming back to the camp. This is the same thing.
Client appreciation.
Client appreciation, solving problems, showing leadership, team building, teamwork. So it's how you talk about those.
Right.
Those skills.
I think it's great advice. And Jack, what was your first summer job?
My first summer job, probably waiting tables. I'm trying to think what came when, but I think it was waiting
And were you
tables.
good at it?
Yeah. This is not a job interview, so I'll tell the truth. No, I wasn't that good at it. I was okay at it. My wife loved waiting tables. She always says if everything goes to
She's going
heck,
back.
she's going back. She was at Friendly's, and she loved it. It really didn't do it for me.
No.
Yeah.
And what about for you?
See,
Although I remember
ice
my
cream.
last table
Really?
gave me a huge tip. It was a great experience. And I was like, I'm going out
That's
on a high
it.
note.
I'm done.
No, I was what I call a dairy princess. I
Ooh.
worked at a Dairy Queen. And it was the summer, and I have to say, I learned a couple of lessons. Like, not all the Jimmies, or as we call them, the chocolate sprinkles, they're not all chocolate. Don't stir up the chocolate dip at the bottom too much. I once had a beautiful fly embedded right in that ice cream cone. Lovely. But I learned that if you have a father with 12 kids, they're not all his, the ice cream is melting, he gives you a 20, and you kind of fumble with the change. At some point, he might just say, keep the change. I made a lot of tip money.
Oh, my God.
I'm not proud
That's
of it. I'm not
amazing.
proud of
That's
it. But
very good. I think my besides being a camp counselor, which I was, but my first summer job was one summer, the horrifying experience of being the administrative assistant in my mother's real estate office in a hotbed of suburban mommies who were realtors. It was brutal. And let me just say that my first customer experiences with crazy realtors who yell at you constantly, it was a very good training ground. It was the worst job I've ever had. And I will never, and I would never wish it on anybody. It was a perfect first job.
But that's it. And the worst experiences are the ones from which you often learn the most.
Yeah.
So
That's it. All right, we're going to wrap it up. So Ellen Gordon Reeves, you can follow her on Twitter at Ellen Reeves. You can go to which website?
www.caniwearmynosering.com.
Okay, by the way, if you want to get 2 books for your kids for graduation, one might be Worth It, Not Worth It. And a lovely companion piece would be, Can I Wear My Nose Ring to the Interview? So here you have your own Amazon curating moment where we're putting 2 things together. Look at that. Look at that beautiful graphic.
Wow.
Okay.
Thank you.
So you can get both of these books
great
for
cover.
your new graduate. And Ellen, thank you so much. We love
Thank
having you
you.
on the program. It's great. Jack, always love having you on
As
the
always,
program,
yep.
of course, because it's your program also. So it's great. Next week, what do we have next week? Anything interesting lined up yet, Megan? No, it's
working on it,
all
yeah.
in Megan's brain. It's fantastic. Megan's the producer. Megan and Sally run the show. We always thank them. I'm Jill Schlesinger.
I'm Jack Otter.
This is Ask the Experts, and we'll see you next week.